Hi, welcome to another painting tutorial by Promethean Paints. Today we're going to be painting the sort of main body of Fulgrim and just finishing off the tail as well. So there's a lot of gold. So what I'm going to be doing is starting off with AK Old Gold. I'm starting from a base coat of AK Tenebrous Grey like we did with the tail, but you can start from a base coat of black. I just had the Tenebrous Grey on there because that's what I use as the base coat for the entire model going through the airbrush. We're going to be doing pretty much all of this with brush today. We're not going to be using the airbrush, we're going to be using brushwork and dry brushwork. So what I'm going to do here is just using the AK Old Gold and base coating all of the metal work, leaving no Tenebrous Greys for the shadows, but we'll implement some shadow work a bit later on, going back to the Tenebrous Grey as a sort of wash. But yeah, just take your time and go over all of the gold. That's all of the armour, the shoulder pads, the gloves. There's some gold on the swords, on his big chain whip thing, and the backpack, and at the base of the cape. Okay, so that's all of the base coating done. Now we're going to move to some dry brushing. So we're going to be using, sorry, that first paint we were using was AK Rusty Gold. We're going to be using AK Old Gold now, and using the Artify dry brush. And yeah, we're just going to be dry brushing the model now. We don't really have to take too much care over the sort of Tenebrous Grey areas. Obviously you don't want to go mad and cover too much of it, but yeah, so just dab some onto your brush, take some off, and then just using the contours and shapes of the model, apply this Old Gold colour to where you want your brightest points. I wanted the main body armour to be brighter than the tail armour. I thought this would be cleaner, closer to the light sourcing. So yeah, just cover as much or as little as you want, making sure you get all those edges, all those finer details, leaving some of that rusty gold in the deepest shadows, so that we end up with a nice bright clean gold finish, but you can see a lot of the detail. There's a lot of detail on this model, and dry brushing will help pick it all out. Okay, now we're going to make a mix. I'm going to use some GW Stormhold Silver, put a little bit of that onto the wet palette, and we're going to make a little sort of 50-50 mix between some of that old gold and the silver to make a very, very, very bright desaturated gold colour. And this would be our sort of top highlight, or second to top highlight. We're going to use Stormhold Silver as the main highlight. And so this, you just dry brush over the areas that you want it to be very, very bright, so those closest to your light source, so at the top and over your edges. Don't put too much of this on, as always. You don't want too many bright highlights, because that detracts away from the effects you're going for. And now we've done that stage, we're just going to go for some pure Stormhold Silver. Again, on those topmost sections, so top of the shoulder pads, top of the neck area, across the fingers and on parts of the weapons. Again, not too much. These are just your bright points. You don't want to take away too much of that gold. You want to keep some of that gold in place. There we go, there's the bulk of it done. Now we want to implement some of those shadows, and we're doing what we did with the tail section, where I've got some watered down Druchi Violet. Probably it's about 1 to 3, 1 to 4, with 1 being your Druchi Violet, and then about 4 or 5 drops of water. Don't worry about thinning it down too much, just it takes a few more coats. It's very quick to dry as a wash. And now I'm just going to go in and dragging the brush towards the areas you want to leave the most paint. Remember, where you leave your brush is where the paint will pull. And just filling in those shadow areas now, so sort of doing an almost as you would a sort of a null oil wash, but this is a bit more careful now with the Druchi Violet. Not only will it implement some shadows, but it'll just give that gold some just extra colour, extra flavour, nice gold, purplish tone to that gold like we've got on the tail. And you can add as much or as little as you want. Of course, you could use like a Reichland flesh shade, any sort of that kind of wash on this if you wanted to, but just to give it a bit more life, we've gone for this purple wash. You'll notice that I'll also pull some of this down into those darker areas in the corners, just to help blend the sort of shaded shadows effects that you've got going on now. And now I've just made a little wash of the tenebrous grey, and again, like we were just doing with that purple wash, we're now going to push the even darker shadows. So where you want it the darkest, is just push some of that wash into those areas. Not too much, but again not too little. You want nice darks and brights. Put in some of those darkest areas next to your brightest areas will really push the contrast, which is what you need to go for with metallics. That contrast between dark and light really helps sell the lightest points. And then finally, with just some of the Stormhold Silver straight out of the pot, I'm just going to add some edge highlighting where I want it at the brightest. The dry brushing does do it quite well, but sometimes just straight off the brush really helps sell it. These will be your very, very brightest points, just to give it some desaturated, really shiny feel to those areas that will be pointing upwards, closest to your brightest points. And there we have it. The main body is sort of done now, that gold work. Obviously the backpack is missing there, but we've got the wings coming as a separate video. And yeah, the wings and that part of the backpack attach. So I've left it separate. We're now going to move on to painting his arms. And of course, like with the box art, get some more natural flesh colour on his arms and face. So to start that off, what I'm going to use is a base coat of the Vamperic Flesh by AK. Any pale flesh colour from GW will be okay, not too pale because you need to highlight, but those sort of mid to bright fleshes they do. One up from Pallid Witch Flesh will probably be okay. You will need a few coats to do that. So yeah, just apply a few coats of that over both arms. I think it's just arms on this part of the model. And then once that's dry, we're going to use the Magos Purple contrast paint, a few drops of that, and then it will be a couple of drops of water, and just apply a couple of coats of that over your flesh to give you a nice naturally shaded look, but it will be a more purplish tone, so it looks like it blends in with the tail. I do 2 coats of this. You could apply one straight out of the pot, but it might be too strong, so just water it down a little bit and just apply a couple of coats. It only takes a few minutes to dry, and just flood the areas, not too much, just make sure it pulls around those recesses, around the veins that are there, just to give it some real good definition. And once that's all dry, we then just apply our base coat back on. So I'll just water down a little bit of that Vampiric Flesh so that it just flows off the brush okay. And you just add this now to your raised areas on the skin. So just across the top of the muscles, try and do little lines if you can, just to try and give that effect like you see on very muscular arms when you get the striation of the muscles. But just over the areas where it would be its most taut, and across the little veins that stick out, leaving that Magos Purple in the deep recesses. And the final highlight, we're going to use AK Ivory, and this will be only on the most raised edges. Again, not too much of this, just across those veins, across the topmost points. I always add a little bit of water to this one just to help thin it down a little bit, and then just wipe your brush dry, just so the paint flows off nicely. And yeah, like I was saying, leave that Magos Purple and your sort of mid-tone showing, and then just use a little bit of this paint as your topmost highlight. And a final touch on the skin with the AK Wine Red, heavily watered down as always when we use this colour. 1 drop paint to 4 or 5 drops of water, and like a wash, we're now just going to really push the sort of, not soreness, but just the redness of the skin around the veins and the deep muscle areas. So I apply this in the deepest recesses where the muscles are, and just across where the veins are as well, just to really make those highlights stand out, and just to give a more flavour, more colour to that skin. So we've added some tonal changes to the skin. And with the skin done, we're just going to move on to the leather areas. In the box art, the leather's black. I'm not a great fan of black leather, so we're just going to be painting our leather, our sort of standard colours, which will be AK leather brown with highlights of AK saddle brown, and then a little bit of Cadian flesh tone is your topmost highlight. Not too much for me to describe here, to be very careful around the skin. Just painting those leather areas on the 2 gloves. And then so leather brown's your main colour, highlight with saddle brown, and then Cadian flesh tone over the top. If you wanted to, you could just base coat these with a pale colour like a wraithbone, and then go over it with a snakebite leather as your contrast paints. But we always push a little bit more on our character models, so yeah, your standard leather mix here. Right, next up we're going to be painting the cape, and we're going to go for a nice bright green cape. So we start with black green, deep green, frog green, and ice yellow. They're your sort of main colours. We'll be doing some blending, some mixing of colours here, but it's basically we're going to be going from the darkest, which is your black green, up to your lightest, which is your frog green, with a bit of ice yellow, and then we'll be finishing it off with some AK fluorescent green. I was making this part up as I went along, but generally it's base coating it with that black green and then mixing through a transition phase between your black green and your deep green, so almost a sort of 60-40 to a 50-50 to a 60-40 in the other direction between black green and deep green, getting lighter and lighter and lighter till you reach pure deep green, and then start the transitions all over again between deep green and frog green, and then finishing off with edge highlights of pure frog green with the ice yellow, and then the fluorescent green on top to really push it. It's trial and error. There's lots of creases on this, lots of flat area. Always try and add a little bit of water to your mixes just to help them flow, and you might need a couple of coats for each one. Watch along to what I'm doing. There's no real rhyme or reason to this. You could do this many different ways. It does get quite tricky with the cape. I think if I was rebuilding this, I'd leave the cape off and have the cape as a separate build. Sometimes a bit easier to get to some of the detail on this. It was a bit tricky. I'd find this very hard if it was actually attached to the model, so I would leave this cape separate or as this build here. And yeah, just follow along, but generally just work on the premise that your darkest colour is going to be in all of the deepest areas, and you move the transitions further and further up by thicker, and you start off with thick edge highlights, really getting thinner and thinner as you go. I do make a wash of the tenebrous grey and put that into some of the recesses just to sell that dark point. The lighting of the camera really pushes the brightness of some of these highlights. You can spend a lot of time blending these, but a lot of this area is going to be covered by the wings and on the back of the model and not even seen, so I wasn't going to spend too much time on this cape at this point. I just wanted to get a nice finish. The main focus really is on the armour and the wings and the tail. So yeah, just take your time and have fun with it. If you make some mistakes, you can always paint over them again and start again. This isn't a very big area, this cape. If you were going with GW colours, you would be looking at a sort of Caliban green, warpstone glow, moot green would be the representative colours, almost dark angel colours, and colours we've used before on previous tutorials. And there we go. There's his cape finished. Nice green. There's not much, won't be much green on this model. I wanted that to really stand out. I'm not a great fan of the cream colours. Now we're going to add some real colour to the model. You'll notice all of the gems I've gone in and painted, base coated with tenebrous grey or black. I can't quite remember which. Neither matters. We're going to go over all of the gems, completely paint them with AK wine red. We're going to be going for glowing gems here. So this is the same sort of method that we do painting eyes or our fire effects. So just find all of the little gems, there's a few of them over his main body, and paint them the wine red as a base coat. Right, and now that's that done, second colour is the AK Blood Red, or Evil Sun Scarlet if you don't have Blood Red. And now you want to paint about 80–90% of your gem of this, leaving the area nearest the armour, so furthest away from you, as the darker red, and the brighter red as the part closest to you. Okay, with that done, with a steady hand now and a slightly smaller brush, use some of pure white. I've got AK white here, but any white will do. I find the AK pure white is a nice colour, lots of pigment. And what you need to do is just add little dots onto your gems in the top corner. And for the bigger gems there, you can see I'll leave a little dot in the top corner and a crescent shape in the bottom right hand corner as you were looking at it. Depending on the size, some of the gems obviously you can't do that, it's not big enough, but for the bigger ones you place a dot and then make that crescent shape, and just do that on all of your gems. Now usually we use GSW Fluorescent Red, but we're doing something different here, so I'm going to use the GSW Fluorescent Rose, giving it a slightly pink hint like we did with the scales on his tail, if you remember. And now this, just paint over primarily the white areas, but also have some of this paint moving into that red as well, so it blends across, but your main focus is to cover the white on these. Apply it quite thick. This is like a contrast paint, but you'll notice the coverage. And then we use some AK Fluorescent Orange, and just put dots of this where the white was originally. And this will really give a weird transitions between Fluorescent Orange and Fluorescent Pink. You get, it's an odd colour combination, but it really works. It helps really push it. And then the final stage, once you've done this part, just applying it to the little dots, is I just go back over where those white dots were with little dots of white as your brightest bright point, to help show the glowing gems. Okay, now we're going to be moving on to the sword. This is the sword, the bigger sword, as if you're looking at the model now in his right hand there, but his left. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing some odd stuff really you might not have seen with metallics before. Is I'm going to be making mixes to start very dark to go very bright, and to do that I'm going to be mixing some tenebrous grey with AK gunmetal, making a really dark silver colour, and that's what will be at the base of the sword. And then I'll be moving into pure gunmetal up to a natural steel colour, and then into the Games Workshop's Stormholst silver. So almost like we were blending the greens with his cloaks, we'll be blending silver metal colours to get a nice dark to light finish on a sword. This is optional. You could just paint this with any silver colour, wash it with Nuln Oil, and then do your highlights, edge highlights as you normally would. But I thought we would have some fun with this, just to show that you can do wet blending and blending with silver colours, starting from a matte colour. So the paints do end up a little bit matte, but you bring that back in the shine with your edge highlights. Practice with this, have some fun with it. If you get it wrong, just base coat the model again in the black, and then just start again. Okay, with the sort of highlights done, with the transitions how I like them, what I now do is I want to give some colour to this sword. So I make washes of Druchi Violet and Doomfire Magenta, heavy washes here, glazes, 1 drop of paint to 5, 6, 7 drops of water, as thin as you can get. As like we always say, the more layers the better. Don't put too much on and ruin your effect. So just apply this in light layers, and I'm just applying this randomly across the sword where I want bits of purple. Remember that where you leave your brush is where the paint will stay the most. So if you want to leave, glaze it from left to right into a central point, will mean that you get a nice transition. Hard to pick up on the camera, these are really thin, and the shine of the metal is really bright. Again, this is optional, but it just adds a little bit of colour onto your sword. Again, thin layers, very thin layers, especially the Doomfire Magenta. Very heavily water that down. I was using that more towards the base, so it was almost like a pinkishy red at the base with purplish hints towards it, almost like an ambient effect of what's going on around him and from his skin. Okay, now we've just sort of moved on to his second sword now, and all I'm going to be doing with this second sword is, I noticed on the box art it was almost black, so all I've done is I've just gone over that second sword with just an edge highlight of your brightest silver, so Stormhold silver, and I've just edge highlighted the entire sword, and then I've just gone back onto the main sword now, and I've made a mix of white and your brightest silver to make a really bright silver, and I'm just edge highlighting the entire sword with that. Again, it's optional, you can just use your normal silver, but mixing in a little bit of white to that really makes it shine, and that'll be your sword work done. And then for the whip, I will just be dry brushing a natural steel or Stormhold silver you could use, and just dry brush that across the whip, following the shapes that you've got on that whip, all the pointy parts. Okay, so there you go. That's the main body done, and I attach it to the tail section, as you can see, just to show you now what it will look like. And we're just going to finish off the tail part now, and we're going to follow the exact same steps we did for the gems. So base coating in the wine red, about 80% coverage with your blood red, and then dots and crescents. I do 2 crescents on this as it's quite big, a big crescent with a little crescent underneath it, the magenta over the top, and then some white dots just to bring back, the orange, and then some white dots. It's exactly the same principles we did for the other gems on this one. 90% coverage. I actually leave a bit of the dark in between, so I make a splodge of red there, as you can see, and then bigger crescents for the red colour, sort of following what the other gems would have been, as this is a slightly bigger gem. Okay, and there we go. That's Fulgrim's tail and main body finished. A lot of work, but you know, we've just got the head, that shoulder sort of shield that he has, and his wings. We've got those little bits of to paint in there, but you can just base coat those with your flesh colour and then Magos Purple like we did with his arms. So just follow that principle. That's what I'm going to be doing next, but I won't cover that on the videos. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed these tutorials. You can see it's pretty simple, straightforward steps to get to this level of finish, and we've only got a few more steps to go, head, shield and wings. So yeah, thanks for watching, like and subscribe, and yeah, I'll see you on the next video. Happy painting!